Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Sound Decisions here on Passion for Sound. Today is part one of a two-part interview series with Gino and Sherry from Geshelli Labs. I reviewed the Geshelli Airish amplifier quite some time ago now on the channel, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and it's since become one of my go-to recommendations for a budget-balanced amplifier. I've even got one sitting on my desk over here as very much a reference for me as to what an entry-level budget-balanced amp should sound like. So I was really excited when Gino and Sherry agreed to have a chat with me. It goes for about an hour and 20 minutes all up, so I've chopped it into two parts. This first part is Gino and Sherry discussing what the origins of Geshelli Labs was, how they've come to do all the different colour schemes they do, what goes into designing the amplifiers and the DACs that they produce, so basically what the origins are and how they've arrived at where they are today. In part two, which is coming up soon, they'll talk about some of the things like why the products are named the way they are, how they deal with interference when they use these cases with acrylic fronts and backs that aren't all shielded and the like, and also some of the questions around why the inputs and outputs are designed the way they are on some of their products. But for now, here's part one of Gino and Sherry talking about the origins of Geshelli Labs and how they go about both designing and producing and building their products. Thanks for joining me. So just for viewers that are watching, I've got Sherry and Gino from Geshelli. Geshelli Labs is the proper name for the company, yes?
Yeah, so it's a soft G. Everybody always says the hard G, like Geshelli. It's actually Geshelli, like Geshelli, but so many people say.
Okay, that's good to know. So Geshelli Labs, yeah?
Yes.
Geshelli, yes.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks both for joining me today. This is, I think, now the fourth interview that I've had on the channel, and I know that everyone really appreciates the input from people that are working in the industry, putting out the products that we all know and love and sometimes love to debate over as well. So thanks so much for agreeing to do this interview. And we'll jump straight into it because I think everything that I would normally ask as an intro is probably part of my opening question, which is that Geshelli Labs is still a relatively niche brand, I'd say, in the market. They're well known in pockets, but not a household name as such. You know, they're not like your major, who I'm trying to think of an equivalent brand. They're not like your Toppings, for example, that for better and worse, everybody knows the name. So I just wanted to ask to start off, and for those that haven't heard of you before, where did you start? What are you all about as a company and a brand? How did you come to be, and what do you stand for?
All you.
Oh, thank you. Where we started, it was actually back in like 2016 timeframe, and Gino was making products for himself. At the time, there wasn't a lot of, I have to stop using my hands. At the time, there wasn't a lot of affordable audio out there, and he started designing his own products, and he would go in after work and just start messing around, making a DAC and making amps for himself. And one day I went in there and he's like, you got to see this, you got to see what I made. And it was really amazing. And I was like, you have to get this out in the world. And he was like, no, nobody's going to be interested in this. And so the way we operate, in a sense, is if he wants a piece of equipment, we have to come up with a way to pay for it. So we put the first eNog on eBay Local and started selling the DACs to military people. We're very close to a military base, and a lot of the enlisted folks, they don't have a lot of money, but they want to hear good audio. So one person bought it, and then another, and it just started to build from there. Do you want to add?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And probably as we went through that, it kind of like slowly started. We started kind of selling to outside places, a little bit on eBay, a little bit. We had a little bit on Amazon at one point.
Yeah, we were selling on Amazon.
And then we, kind of met up with a local or a local US YouTuber. I have to remember we're talking to Australia. So we met up with a local YouTuber and, sent him one of the demo units. This is the old eNog, which was just all plexiglass case, kind of no frills, just a normal.
Yeah, the first one was hand soldered, actually, the one that you had sent.
Yeah, probably was. At that point, yeah, we were probably putting them together.
Yeah,
here.
in our garage.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Like we were just pumping out boards. Oh, dude, we were
point soldering, is it?
at one point, yeah. So we had some surface mount stuff on there that we were kind of doing with hot air, and we were kind of doing it that way, but we had a lot of through hole capacitors on there back then. So we had about 50-50 parts that were, all being put together by hand. And it was horrible. I mean, they were great, but it was just like so much work. We're sitting there I'm like, I can't do this every day. And once we kind of got into that local YouTube kind of scene, that's when things started kind of getting crazy. And then that's when we purchased our first pick and place machine and, kind of reflow process. And once we did that, it was a lot easier. We could start spitting boards out. And we started making the Enogs like kind of mass production at that point. And then after that, I think around that time, man, it's been a crazy 4 years. So I'm trying to go back.
And we were when he says mass production, he means here.
Yes. I'm sorry.
We weren't sending anything out.
Yeah, actually, in this room, we had a full pick and place machine. It was huge. Wow. And we were spitting them out of there and carrying them over to the reflow oven. So we didn't have a full conveyor at the time. And we were making those Enog boards. And then once that kind of all got crazier and crazier, we had to start making more and making more. Then we went and rented a facility. Mm-hmm. We said, all right, we're just going to jump off the cliff and go rent a facility. And then at that point, we had a full machine set up. We ordered, kind of got everything. We ended up making a kind of a full SMT process. So you can just run the boards, pick and place, down the conveyor, run to the oven, done. And then at that point, we're getting ready for the Enog 2. That's right. When that kind of all.
And our first facility that he's talking about had no air conditioning.
No, it's horrible.
It was horrible.
And you're in Florida, yeah?
We're in Florida.
My man, it's like in the summer. Oof.
It was so brutal.
It's like you're in this heat and you're like, okay, is today the day I'm going to die?
Yeah. And then you have the oven, so we're baking the boards.
I was going to say, is that then made worse by having the hot?
Worse.
Oh, wow.
Brutal.
We had multiple laser cutters generating heat. I mean, it was just like a big.
And then you open up the big door, and if in Florida, you either have giant bugs or giant lightning storms. So it was just a never-ending.
Yeah. So that's when, around that time, we started. We were developing the Enog 2. Pardon me. I'm trying to think back. The time is so that 4 or 5 years of time is just it feels like a million years. So when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking of the 1920s. That's what it feels like,
Yeah. So you guys have only been around since 2016. Did you say?
Yeah, that's when we officially started.
Yeah, that's when we started.
Wow, it seems like longer.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
In a good way.
Our first product on Amazon was 2017.
I think so. Yeah, it was around that time.
Yeah, it was around.
Yeah, if anybody goes back and fact checks us, it's been a long amount of years, so it starts to just become a blur. So yeah, I think it was 2017. We were on Amazon for a while. That's because the Archel. That's when we had the Archel amp, and we kind of that all came out, but. We were rolling these out at a very slow kind of pace just because we couldn't make them fast enough. That was the biggest thing is, even for a small company, if you have to make 100, that's a lot. Imagine you have to sit down and all those headphones behind you have to solder them all and put them together and everything. And it's a few, you and our kids helping, high school kids who don't want to have anything to do with this. We're like, no, get back in here. You gotta.
Yeah, at one point we had our daughter. Everything was at the time plexiglass.
Yeah.
So we had her put together all the cases. She wanted money for something. I don't know. She was like 50. She did every single one of them backwards and upside down.
Yeah.
And so we had 50 Archels that had to go out on Amazon the next day, get packed up, and I'm picking them up, and I'm like,
yes.
Everything.
Yes, you'll be having your kid to help you with YouTube when they grow up a little bit more.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't worked out how yet, but he's had one cameo on YouTube and an extra cameo to the patrons as well at one stage. So he started really young.
Oh yeah, but so it kind of it's funny because that was the kind of the dark ages of doing it. And really the great memories, those are great memories, but the really good memories come in when we got our facility we're at now. So when we got that facility, that was when, we had a proper like, air conditioned whole, kind of, I don't know what you would call it, like a production area.
Yeah.
And that's when, we got, we had to kind of got everything together really nice. We got more machines to help us, like stencil print, solder stencil, solder paste printing machines, and, giant air compressors, all kinds of crazy stuff now, and that's when we really did. For me, that's when it all like officially started for us. And that was kind of mid Enoch 2 days.
Yeah.
And, Archel 2 wasn't out yet. We were still doing the original Archel.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when we released the Archel 2, was that, like, I think it was around like September, October or something like that. And then that's when everything just went crazy. Like,
and that's when we really start remembering what happened.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
And feeling all too well.
Yes. Yeah. The
like
dark ages were like, I'm like, was I soldering that in the garage or my bedroom or something? I don't even remember.
We didn't have any like formal shipping. So we were driving and meeting people because we were selling primarily locally.
Of course,
so we were like, okay, well, what time do you want to meet? Where?
Oh yeah, that was back then. Yeah. So it got crazy. Like, Archel 2 days is when, things got really crazy. And that's when we started like getting our act together. And now, we're getting helpers, people to help us, mainly like the kids.
Yeah, the kids.
the kids have been the savior, believe me.
And it was also interesting because when you're only making small amounts, you don't understand how much you rely on vendors to get things done. Yeah. So right now we actually make our own foam inserts. We bought a click and press machine.
Oh yeah, the clicker press.
Because you're putting in an order and they're saying, 10 days, and a month later you still don't have it. So now you're going on back order. So the more we're selling, the more we're having to bring things in-house and do it all ourselves.
Right.
Because you just can't get the quantity of the parts you need in a timely manner.
Yeah, finding vendors is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we learned. So the more the more we were selling, the harder it is to get things like boxes, to get, things like foam. And I totally feel for other manufacturers, especially our local US manufacturers, when we'll see or hear, and they're just saying like, we can't get boxes for some, or just whatever. And I just want to go out there and be like, I completely understand what you're saying. Just trying to get simple things sometimes.
That's why I started powder coating.
Yeah.
We were trying to do anodizing, and we had a supplier in Orlando that sells us our aluminum, big 12-foot long, and he cuts them down. And we were sending them to the anodizing shop, and they were coming back horrible. And we're like, we can't sell these. These
that's tough with anodizing, isn't it?
Yeah. So then we found a powder coater, and he started doing our powder coating, and every 5 or 10 would be great. And then the next 5 or 10 would be, you couldn't sell them. And we're like, all right, we need to fix this.
Yeah, plus we wanted to start breaking into colors. Right. That was the other part of that too.
There was 2 aspects. Yeah. And we're like, all right, we need to fix this. And I'm like, I can do it. And I watched YouTube videos and talked to some powder coaters.
You put some work in on that.
Yeah. It took a long time to get to where I am now. I can basically shoot anything very well, but that took a while.
Yeah, it took us a long time. So we actually have now a full powder coating facility shop thing operation. Yeah. I mean,
we have people on the side wanting me to do their rims. And
I was gonna say you could branch out into a whole different world.
I have the ovens. I have like 4 guns.
Yeah,
it's a pretty big setup.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's where, like, she kind of got crazy with the coloring.
Yeah, I know.
That's where, like, all of a sudden we're getting like 9 different bags of powder coat delivered every 2 days. And I'm like, what this is? These are 7 different purples. No, they're all different. I'm like, it looks like purple. But
on that note, I've got an interesting, I think what'll be an interesting question here that I haven't got in my original list, but what sparked the shift into the range of colors? So most manufacturers, you're lucky to get 2 or 3. You're lucky to get 2 or 3 choices. Were you getting any feedback from customers that they wanted the colors, or Sherry, was it just that you said, wouldn't it be cool, and off you went?
Well, okay, so that's not nice that you're saying. So it started off, I wanted the purple. And this was back in the day. And he and I fought like you wouldn't believe, because he thought it was just the strangest, nobody's going to buy that. And I was like, we're buying purple. We're doing purple and we're doing blue and we're doing red. And he's like, this is dumb. You're paying for it. And I'm like, fine, I'll pay for it. And it was the best feeling because it sold so fast and I got to gloat for the longest time.
Oh man, people were emailing like, where do I get that purple? Where do I get the purple? Some YouTuber had a purple or something.
Mhm.
How do I get purple? I'm like, purple.
Yeah, he was salty about that.
And everything, by the way, when you have powder coating set up, like everything you own that's near that powder coating setup gets, or that operation gets covered in purple, by the way. So your entire room behind you is purple now. You touch the walls, purple. Like it's
a constant annoyance for him because he'll go to grab a tool and there's purple powder coat on it, and he just looks at me and his face gets red. It's like purple, and I'm like, yeah, it's a great color.
We're getting better now. Now we have a separate area that has those
meat
flaps,
locker
the flat
flaps.
things that you can walk through, contains it, and we actually got a better booth coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming. So that it has like crazy ability to kind of suck the powder out, and
So what a lot of times what'll happen is somebody will, like, I have emails where somebody will want me to match their car. They have an old classic car and it has to be this gold. So I'll try a lot of different colors, make them their color, but then I have all this extra powder. So I'm like, well, let me try to make this and this. And that's where these combo shades are coming out and different things. It's usually from somebody who makes a suggestion, or like the mist was somebody had a guitar and I saw it on YouTube and I was like, oh, that's really sweet. So I wonder if I can do that. And I tried it and it was amazing. And I put it online and enough people wanted it where now it's a color.
Yeah. The blue mist. Yeah. Oh man.
That's
when we had the JNOG release, I'm like, we were like running out of blue mist. It was the weirdest thing. We always like prepare the wrong color.
Miss the mark every time.
Yeah, every single time. We're like, okay, we have like a zillion of this color case because that's what everybody wants. And then all of a sudden orders are coming through for the JNOGs and they're all blue mist. I'm like, why is everyone blue mist? We're like running out of blue mist.
I'm at midnight. People are always talking about how we answer emails in the middle of the night. That's because I'm outside powder coating.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Because we still have to do all our stuff during the day.
Yeah.
And we have a separate operation. We do laser cutting for some large restaurant chains and different things. So we have to do that. He does engineering on the side, and then the
just
powder
constant.
Yeah. So that's why we can answer emails.
Sounds very familiar. You're juggling a million things at once. I know what that's like.
Yes.
Hard
Oh
work.
yes.
Very hard work.
Yes.
So that's our powder coating story.
That's cool. And I must say, I love mine. I've got it actually behind me.
Oh, yeah, you got the special.
Which ones? Yeah.
I got the teal.
Oh
and
yes,
silver,
the silver.
Yeah.
which looks very schmick. I'm very happy with that on my desk. It normally sits on my desk, but I thought I'm going to put it behind us so it's in camera for this.
Yeah, what happens sometimes, like with your silver, we had to remove that. So our colors, which I didn't realize for a long time, are based on what the manufacturer can produce. And especially when COVID hit, all of a sudden, everything was out of stock. So a lot of the colors, like the silver, I can't get anymore. So they'll come up with a different one, but it's a different, and that's something that we didn't realize would happen.
Yeah, sometimes we're at the mercy. I mean, you're always going to be at the mercy of who's making the powder, So yeah, there's times where it's like, or we'll get a different shade, they'll call it the same shade, but it's a different shade. And it's like, we got to try to match this. And somebody might have bought a headphone amp 3 months ago with this purple, and then we got to try to, I mean, we definitely get into that sometimes, that's kind of the downside.
Yeah, there's a whole buy, sell, trade powder coating site where people are trying to buy extra powder coat that they can no longer get.
Right.
And I've been on there. There's a baby blue that somebody had, and I had them send me pictures because they wanted a JNOG to match. And then I had to find it because it wasn't available anymore. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
it's nuts.
who knew the intricacies of powder coating? It's a lesson for all of us, I think, on this one.
Every aspect of everything, it's a lot of times people just see it. Oh yeah, this is just this box with color and plexi on it. I'm like, you have no idea. We had to source everything on there. We have to buy this plexi and a truck pulls up, and we got to cut it down. I mean, it's like there's so much that goes into it.
Even the aluminum, people think, oh, it's an off the shelf. No, that's
Yeah,
something he designed. We had to get the tools made.
Yeah, we rent U-Haul trucks. I don't know if you have U-Hauls in Australia. So
I think most of us will know the concept of it.
Yes.
So the idea is it's a rental truck, yeah? Like anyone can get it and drive it. Yeah.
And so we go rent the truck, and then we have to go drive to Orlando. That's probably about an hour away. It's actually up Sanford, but we drive over there, and then they bring us big forklift of like 2,000 pounds of aluminum beam. They're like long beams that are 12 feet long. So that thing right behind you started out as a 12-foot long post or a big beam. And so we chop them up into that size.
So they're in the form of the rectangular tube.
Yeah, they're extruded. So that we have to buy a tool. So we designed a tool a long time ago, and we have to buy a tool. Like you pay for it through there.
Right.
And then they push it through the aluminum block through there, and it becomes that essentially. And we got to cut it, sandblast it.
And we don't have a forklift, so they put it on the truck in a nice, handy forklift, all nice. And then we have to take them off one at a time and carry them. And
seriously, it's like 2,000 pounds. It's like the minimum you could buy. It's like 2,000 pounds. So we're there for like hours carrying all these off. We had to do this several times.
Mhm.
So is the next thing on the list that you've got to earn money for a forklift by any chance?
That's all listen, you have no idea. That's all I hear.
I want a forklift so bad. That and a box truck with a
lift gate.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Most girls want, diamonds at that. I want a forklift.
I'm like saying, or like, what's going to happen when we get a forklift? Like, we're going to get in it immediately, like wreck and like smash the walls or something, immediately. This is what's going to happen. Like I'm like holding on to the end of the fork, spinning around in a circle.
It would be so cool though to have that.
They're going to save enough money for the forklift and for the repairs is what I'm hearing.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
That's great. That's great. I'm loving this, but let's jump into the audio related questions, because I'm thinking some people may be here for the audio stuff as much as I'm loving.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's great. I love it. We sort of started to go in this direction before, I think, so I might ask it now. You were talking about how everything, there's kind of depth to all the details you need to understand, all the choices of parts, etc., getting all the stock. So I wanted to look at one of the questions, which is your amps, and therefore I'm guessing the DACs as well, because you've got output stages and stuff in the DACs. Mm-hmm. But let's focus probably on the amps. The amps are designed around op amps rather than a discrete design.
Correct.
What's the rationale for that approach from you guys?
So both directions are fine. We just chose op amps mainly for I'm going to say it's like cleanliness, board design, a little bit easier. Op amps are a nice package, so whenever you lay down an op amp, everything's there. They're usually from the factory, the same. You're not having to really tweak much. You get really good numbers for free with op amps. It probably wasn't like that, back then, but, at least when I started in this kind of world, say in the late 90s and things like that, op amps were these noisy things. You make comparators, you kind of do other things, but, people use them in audio, but, they really, I'd say, especially Texas Instruments, really stepped up their game. And so, you see everybody getting these numbers now. It's thanks to these op amps just being perfect. So, it's like, you're basically buying an engine that's completely tuned up, ready to go, dropping it in your chassis, in the frame of the car, and, letting it rip. But I completely respect, designs with output transistors, all these other fun things, tubes. Hey, you got to bring up tubes, we completely respect that, but it's just, I like the current op amp world right now. And especially, we're not dealing in high power either. So, you can get away with a lot, with headphones, now when you go into bigger speakers, that's a different story. So we lost your audio.
Between two windows here, and so when I press the space bar to unmute it, sometimes it's just putting a whole lot of spaces in my list of questions. So,
no worries.
What I was going to say was that leads to the next part of this question, which is, I've noticed in some of my reviews that a lot of the op-amp based amplifiers, so if I think about like the THX 789, the topping A90, the topping L30 would be in there as well. A lot of them have quite a two-dimensional sound. Whereas I noticed with the Airish, what really impressed me about the Airish was that even though it's built on the same kind of principles using op amps and the like, you managed to get a more three-dimensional sound out of it. Now, I understand that a lot of the higher power op amps are using a lot of feedback and playing around with feedback and trying to push the maximum outputs of these op amps. You just mentioned that you're working with slightly lower power. So is that the difference? Is it about how far you're pushing the op amps? What would you put it down to in terms of why the Airish is able to sound more natural, more open, more spacious?
I'll give you my best answer. So a lot of it is, I think my generic answer is going to be a lot of it's experimentation. So, you wouldn't believe how many proto boards we have that never see the light of day. I think that's number one in that answer is experimentation. I personally don't believe everything is 100% mathematical in the sense that, if you write this on paper and you have all these graphs, it's going to sound exactly I don't exactly believe in that. I believe, I'm more of an experimentation type of person. So even though on paper, this particular circuit may, measure perfectly or something, there may be something about it, it's changing the sound one way or the other. So I would say in the Airish, a lot of experimentation, a lot of boards, a lot of, throwing things in the garbage.
A lot of garbage.
Yes. And with the Airish, we wanted to have this kind of truly balanced kind of design where we have 4 output buffers. They're mono output buffers with 2 op amps. I love those 1656s right now, the OPA 1650. Nothing against that was the 1612s, the other one. A lot of other good op amps. I just really like those 1656s right now. But I would just say, experimentation, kind of a cop-out answer, but we just mess around with weird designs all the time. We brought in another guy who's a mentor of mine named Mike Z. We brought him in, was it back in November?
Yeah.
And he, October, November, something like that. But he's even for now in the future, he's really like on the train of like just trying weird stuff, and you end up with weird, some things sound terrible. Some of the things there's some things we do is just like, this is awful, throw this away. And that's, even with the Airish, that's kind of how it just developed.
Yeah, right before we were about to release a different form factor of that Airish, and we were so close and everybody, knew it was coming. And he did the final test before we went over to see Easter, and he threw it in the trash. He's like, no, I was so mad. I was like, what do you mean no? And he's like, I don't like it.
Wow. Yeah, just didn't gel. It's a lot of this is art, honestly. Like there's kind of like a group of people, it's kind of always like anything, it's 50-50 with everything. There's a group of people that just say, hey, mathematically, these numbers, this is how it's going to be represented. This is how, this is perfection. Respect that completely, because we wouldn't be engineers without that, but there's also a portion of it is, hey, I'm painting on a canvas. And if you get caught too much on one or the other side, it just becomes like redundant, and it just becomes a job. You know what I mean? Like it's no different than anything else. It just so we try to like get those good numbers, get that math right, but also at the same time be able to paint and enjoy ourselves while doing this. And a lot of that is just slapping different headphones on with this particular design that is something we kind of whipped up one way or the other, and we're like, hey, we really like this. And I think that's the easiest way to answer that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you probably answered this, but I just want to confirm, do you apply measurements along the way as well, or is it more designed mathematically and then subjectively tested? So you're objectively and subjectively testing them?
Yeah, so it's yes. So I would say yes. So yeah, generally when we start at this point, we have proven designs that we kind of keep in our toolbox. So a lot of times we might start from one of those now. Before it wasn't like that. Before it was just strictly, hey, mathematically, this is how this should work. And then, we'll build it and then throw it on the machine. We have an APX machine, so we'll throw it on there. And then, wow, this mathematically isn't right, or something's really messed up. And you go back and look and, oh, I did this wrong. But nowadays, if we're going to design something for the summer, say, I'm not giving anything away, I'm just saying, if we're designing something for the summer, a lot of it now is we pull circuits that we did from the toolbox that we have, and we know how they're going to function on the machine. So we'll usually pull those, kind of plug them in, maybe mess with some little things. That kind of becomes where the paintbrush comes out. And yeah, any and everything we do, we make sure it runs across the APX machine. And that's just because we want to be true to, to what we're kind of, doing. And we want to be true to our kind of measurements that we put out there. We don't want anything to, everything we actually make and ship goes through that machine.
Yeah. You don't randomly select it. Every single product gets hit on that right before I grab it, and then it goes over to
you never know who else has a machine in this world who's going to take it and say, look, they're liars. And it's like, no. So we run everything, and we publish how we test it, and people ask us all the time too. We get a lot of questions about it, and we'll do a lot of measurements for people. Like, they may want some weird measurement. Well, yeah, if we have some time, we'll 100% do it for you. Mm-hmm. But yes, to get back to the question, yeah, now, like I said, now that we have a toolbox of kind of circuits that we really like, that are proven for us, that kind of have that sound that you like, or not, that you're talking about, we usually use those and kind of tweak them and always mess around with things.
Build off that. And something new, sometimes new things come up, or, in the case of recently, you lose the access to AKM.
Oh man,
So
every time I hear AKM
coming up,
and my chest gets, I get anxiety from that.
But new things are coming out all the time, so then we can turn around and look at that, and it might have a totally different sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really keen to ask about the AKM, but before we move away from the testing side, one thing I'm really interested when you mentioned, Gino, about the sort of tweaking a design, so taking something out of the toolkit, testing it, listening to it, tweaking it, without asking you to give away any special sauce.
No, that's fine.
What sorts of things are you tweaking? Is it maybe changing capacitors and resistors used within the circuit? What's the sort of stuff
exactly.
You do to adjust that sound?
Exactly that. It could be some, trying different feedback resistors. Lately we tried a couple of, my buddy Mike coming in, he's just a genius. He's throwing a whole different angle of experimentation, and he's it seemed like his whole life he wanted to be involved in doing things like this, by the way. But yeah, so say putting the pot in different locations of the circuit, we could say things, just nothing that hasn't been done before, honestly, but it's just, and just with kind of the op amps we chose, trying other things, resistors, try different filter capacitors just for whatever reason. It's more resistors, I would say, and kind of messing with op amp placement. Stuff like that. I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of goodies. For amps, they're not super, like DACs, you can do a lot more fun stuff than amps. Amps are pretty much, you're with an amp most of the time, you're just, trying to get that signal super clean, but with, maybe a little extra juice here and there. But yeah, like you said, a lot of times feedback resistors are messing around with things like that. I think it's cool.
The reason I asked that, and I'll see if you want to confirm or deny this, but my takeaway that from all the research and listening and testing and whatever I do, I get the sense that every little piece of the puzzle matters. So changing a resistor here or a capacitor there, or as you just said, placing the op amp somewhere else or the pot somewhere else, it sounds to me like all of those things can significantly change. Maybe not the overall output of the sound in terms of it's still going to have roughly the same characteristics, but maybe just tweak the tonality slightly, or the leading edge of the notes might get a bit sharper or softer. Is that the sort of stuff? Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I would say depending on what kind of listener you are, like a critical listener, you know, this and that, you know, there's all kinds of different people. So again, they're going to view, you know, that piece of art very differently. You know, you may see reds differently than I do. But yes, I mean, you know, all of that is a factor. You know, it just yes, I think it's
That's a very open and almost philosophical question. So
yes, yeah. I'm kind of being really, really broad in my answer with that. I mean, there's a ton of like nights of sitting there looking at circuit boards and like racking your brains. I'm kind of more giving this easier answer to the question. But yeah, I mean, you know, there can be tons of like hours of messing with things and just, you know, looking at the placement of parts and, you know, if you look at things on a machine, you can see a graph, you know, maybe the frequency response is one way or the other, maybe you have these little tiny bumps or something. And that can affect something, you know,
Well, the first JNUG,
yeah,
he thought, you know, everything looked well, it measured well, he liked it. I
Right.
heard it and I was like, yeah, I don't
right. There's
like
lots
that.
of times, yeah, you reject things all the time.
And he had to go back to the drawing. And it was nothing on paper that there should have been
Right.
anything wrong with it.
It's just, you know,
I just didn't think it sounded amazing, and it has to.
I always, you know, again, I just go back to the art thing. A lot of this is art where, you know, we paint a certain picture, you know, we may sit there all night and try to, you know, color this little circle in over here a certain way that we like it, you know, but a lot of it is just that, you know, so it's never a thing where I can say, hey, we'll make this change and, you know, you should notice the amp is sharper, or, you know, pick one of these audio terms, kind of the esoteric audio terms. It's more going to be your interpretation, you know, that's kind of more how we carry this whole thing. Like, you know, it's, you know, because some people love it, some people hate it, you know, so some people may be like, oh, man, this thing's terrible, you know, I just don't like it, you know, and so be it. You know?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, I know for me, reviewing gear and also being an enthusiast myself, in fact, I might look at it more as an enthusiast. I used to find certain reviewers that I read their articles or I watched their videos, and I would start to learn that, oh, I hear the same way as you, and I hear the opposite to you. And so if I read a review that they hate it, I think, oh, I might be interested in that. And then somebody else loves it. I go, oh, if you love it, I probably love it. So yeah, it's sorry about the screaming in the background.
No, it's okay.
It's probably very similar in that regard, what you're saying here, which is that we do all hear it differently. We all have different perceptions. There'll be gear that I love that viewers of the channel go, wow, what was he thinking? And then vice versa, there'll be viewers going, if Lachlan likes it, I know I like it as well. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
We always talk about it. I mean, it's, you know, people don't like car brand A and they love car brand B, and they'll fight and fight and fight about car brand A, you know, Nintendo versus Sega. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your YouTube channel, but, you know, it goes, we use that all the time. You know, like we talk about Nintendo versus Sega, you know, both had great, you know, great graphics or whatever it was, you know, at the time. But people fought to the death, you know, about it. And, you know, it's your interpretation, you know, I always say, and we respect it all. You know, we're not in there to try to make this perfect thing that every human being's going to worship. We're trying to just make something, you're getting a representation of us. That's seriously
something we're putting out what we're proud of and what we like.
It's cheesy sounding, but that's really, that's honest to God what we're doing. I mean, we're just saying here, this is us. This is what we do. You like it, you don't like it, you know. There's so many options.
Yeah. And it's hard. I tell everybody, people will write in and they'll say, you know, why should I buy yours? What makes yours different? Everybody has good stuff right now. It's really hard to make bad audio these days.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's not many things that come across my desk, particularly in terms of amplifiers and DACs. Headphones, a little bit different sometimes. But in terms of amps and DACs, I don't think I've had something come across where I've gone, that's really crap. There've been some that I've been disappointed in.
Right.
And I won't name them on this video because I don't want you guys to be associated with me naming anything that wasn't so good.
Thank you.
But there's very little stuff that I've gone, just do not buy it. Whereas there's been headphones and earphones I've listened to where I'm like, just don't buy it. Spend your money elsewhere. Amps and DACs, I don't think there's much I'd really say that about. So that's a really good point.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually agree with you on that. Definitely agree with that statement. I mean, it's everything. There's so much that's really good. You know, they're TI's producing some, beautiful op amps for everybody to use now. The DAC chips out there are just crazy. I mean, they're so good, compared to what it used to be. I mean, they're just incredible, so.
We're very, very spoiled for choice, aren't we, in that regard?
Yes.
On all this sort of amp and op amp topic, I just want to ask you a question. I think you've already answered it, so feel free to give us a short answer if we've already covered this ground. One of the patrons of the channel, Snow Ranger, asked if you guys are interested at all in looking at doing discrete component products, most likely amplifiers he's talking about. Is that something you're interested in exploring, or are you just really happy playing in op amp land? Which
his name was
totally
Snow.
Fine. His
Snow
handle
Ranger?
is Snow Ranger. His actual name is Blair, so you can answer Blair directly if you wanted to.
Hi, Blair. Mr. Snow Ranger. So we talk about that a lot. With Mike coming in, he's an analog guru. So we've definitely have had some conversations. I think that's the answer I can give without getting yelled at by Sherry after this interview. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely looked into some stuff. We've had lots of conversations with him coming in. Our portfolio's just like going, or at least our brainstorming portfolio is going crazy. So that's my easy answer for that.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. We will wait with bated breath by the sound of it for more news.